Then we have another thing where Brittney Griner says that says something about that effing white girl. Now, can you imagine the outrage if Caitlin Clark said those things? The injuries that black girl was running from.
The WNBA finds itself drowning in yet another controversy that perfectly encapsulates everything wrong with how the league treats its biggest star, as shocking footage appears to show Brittney Griner calling Caitlin Clark a effing white girl after fouling out against the Indiana Fever, while the league that has profited enormously from Clark's star power continues to turn a blind eye to the systematic targeting and harassment of the player who single-handedly saved their struggling organization.
I'm sure what she said, but the way people are taking it is that she said some very disrespectful stuff. Alright, so let's take a look at what she is saying right here. I'm not a lip reader, but it looked like right here she says, effing white girls. Oh man, effing trash, effing white girls. Effing trash right there. Effing white.
What unfolded on Thursday night during the Indiana Fever's 81-76 victory over the Atlanta Dream was nothing short of disgraceful, though sadly not surprising for anyone who has been paying attention to how WNBA players treat Caitlin Clark. Brittney Griner, the same player who was traded for the Russian Merchant of Death and became an international incident, apparently couldn't handle being outplayed by a 22-year-old point guard who weighs about half as much as she does.
The post from Brittney Griner, and one thing I don't understand is that like there is some kind of flimsy evidence, I guess. Like we're not lip readers. We're not lip readers. She probably says trash. Like it sounds like she has said. It looks like what it apparently says is effing white.
After struggling mightily throughout the game, managing only 5 points in 25 minutes, Griner found herself ejected from the game for accumulating too many fouls. But instead of walking off the court with the dignity expected of a professional athlete, cameras caught what appeared to be Griner mouthing the words, trash and effing white girl, in reference to Caitlin Clark. Let that sink in for a moment. A veteran player, someone who should be setting an example for younger athletes, resorting to racial slurs because she couldn't handle being outplayed by someone half her size.
If you guys did not watch the game in its entirety, Brittney Griner fouled out late in the fourth, and she was in foul trouble the whole game. The referees was definitely calling everything on her. Even though the Indiana Fever really didn't get a chance to shoot a bunch of free throws that game, they was making specifically calls against Brittney Griner, and she was getting frustrated about it, man. Now, footage has surfaced, a couple different takes on this clip as well as to what she actually said. Some people said she didn't call Caitlin Clark a effing white girl. Some people say that she said what a effing whack call. At the end of the day, she said something.
The footage, which has since gone viral across social media platforms, shows Griner's apparent outburst clear as day. While lip reading isn't an exact science, the visual evidence is damning enough that even casual observers can see what appears to be happening. This isn't some ambiguous gesture or unclear audio. This is a professional athlete appearing to use racial language against a fellow player because she couldn't handle her own poor performance on the basketball court.
Well, now it appears that Brittney Griner has been caught on video. And yes, there's a certain amount of lip reading that's going on here, but y'all let you be the judge, because I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to try to decipher what it is Brittney Griner was saying. By the way, she fouled out of a WNBA game against Caitlin Clark in the Indiana Fever. She plays for the Atlanta Dream now. So here we go. Brittney Griner, who Joe Biden acquired 2 years ago and maybe the most lopsided trade of all time, this side of Deshaun Watson, was caught on camera saying what appeared to be some not very nice things about white girl Caitlin Clark during her little WNBA game last night.
If you are enjoying, please subscribe. What makes this incident even more infuriating is the context in which it occurred. Caitlin Clark didn't even have a spectacular night by her standards, scoring just 11 points in the victory. This wasn't a case of Clark dropping 30 points and embarrassing Griner in front of a national audience, and this was simply a case of one player doing her job while another player completely lost her composure and apparently resorted to language that would get any other employee fired from any other workplace in America. But the Griner incident wasn't even the only controversy involving Caitlin Clark in that same game, which perfectly illustrates the hostile environment she faces every single night she steps onto a WNBA court. During the same contest, Clark also had an altercation with Ryan Howard that resulted in both players being assessed technical fouls. The league's response to this incident? Both players received matching $30.00 fines, as if they were equally responsible for whatever transpired between them. Think about that for a moment. The WNBA looked at an altercation involving their biggest star and another player and decided that a $30.00 fine, the equivalent of pocket change for professional athletes, was appropriate punishment for both parties. But when Brittney Griner appears to use racial slurs against that same star player, the league's response has been complete silence.
I'm seeing a lot of very, very racist women, right? These are racist women who were told that they were God's gift to women's basketball, that they are black, and because of that, they are better than white people at sports. That's the one area that they can succeed over white people in sports, right? And this is their league, right? Then you got a young, the stereotypical white girl, pretty, skinny, is better than it comes into the sport and becomes the Michael Jordan, LeBron James of the sport. The face gets more publicity on one than they ever got in some of their playoff, any of their games ever. Brings more money. They are extremely jealous and won't say it. They want to make it like it's typical basketball, but no, they have made it very clear. Angel Reese, the Brittney Griners, that nobody cared about their league before.
This represents the kind of selective enforcement and double standards that have become the WNBA's calling card when it comes to protecting Caitlin Clark. When Clark is involved in any kind of physical altercation, the league is quick to assign equal blame and hand out matching punishments, as if the player who has revolutionized their sport is somehow equally responsible for every negative interaction she experiences. But when other players cross lines that shouldn't exist in professional sports, suddenly the league develops a case of selective blindness. The $30.00 fine for the Howard incident becomes even more laughable when you consider what Caitlin Clark brings to the WNBA financially. This is a player whose very presence can turn a Tuesday night game into a cultural event, whose jersey sales have broken league records, and whose games consistently draw television audiences that other WNBA contests can only dream of achieving. Yet the league treats her like any other player when it comes to punishment, while refusing to protect her when she becomes the target of truly inappropriate behavior. What we're witnessing with both the Griner incident and the broader treatment of Caitlin Clark isn't isolated behavior. It's part of a systematic pattern of targeting that has become so obvious it's impossible to ignore.
We have another thing where Brittney Griner says that says something about that effing white girl. Now, can you imagine the outrage if Caitlin Clark said those things? That Angel Reese, that black girl, was running from that. Why is it that the black players can be openly racist? There's investigation into racist comments, but you can be racist toward a white girl who is bringing all these eyes to the WNBA.
Now we have Brittney Griner apparently taking this targeting to an entirely new level by introducing horrible language into her frustration with Clark's success. This isn't competitive trash talk between athletes. This is a veteran player appearing to cross racial lines because she can't handle being outplayed by someone who represents everything the league should be celebrating. The pattern is clear. When players can't match Caitlin Clark's basketball ability, drawing power, or professional demeanor, they resort to creating controversies, manufacturing drama, or in Griner's case, apparently using language that has no place in professional sports. It's like watching a group of adults become so frustrated with a child's success that they resort to playground bullying tactics, except these are supposed to be professional athletes representing the highest level of women's basketball. What makes this pattern even more disturbing is how predictable it has become. Every time Clark has a successful game, every time she breaks another attendance record, every time she brings new fans to the sport, you can practically set your watch by when the next manufactured controversy will emerge. It's as if some players have made targeting Clark their primary contribution to basketball discourse rather than focusing on their own games.
I believe that Bob Griner said trash followed by fucking white girl. Now, like I said, I'm not a lip reader. I don't know what she said. But again, the perception is the only thing that matters. And the perception throughout the WNBA is players dislike Caitlin Clark because she's white. I think the main reason they dislike Caitlin Clark is because she's white and has elevated the league into the mainstream.
Perhaps the most infuriating aspect of this entire situation is the WNBA's complete failure to protect the player who has done more for their league than anyone in recent memory. This is the same organization that has watched Caitlin Clark transform their sport from a niche product to a cultural phenomenon, yet they seem more interested in appeasing the players who target her than protecting their most valuable asset. The league's silence on the Griner incident speaks volumes about their priorities and their spine, or lack thereof. When faced with footage that appears to show one of their players using racial language against their biggest star, the WNBA has chosen to pretend it didn't happen, rather than address it head-on. This isn't just poor leadership, it's cowardly leadership that prioritizes avoiding difficult conversations over maintaining professional standards. Compare this to how other professional sports leagues handle similar situations. The league's failure to act on the Griner incident becomes even more egregious when you consider their previous responses to much less serious situations involving Clark. They were quick to assign equal blame for the Howard altercation, suggesting they're perfectly capable of taking action when it suits their purposes. But when faced with apparent racial language directed at their star player, suddenly they develop paralysis.
The thing is, I wonder what would happen if you catch one of the white players saying effing black girls. You know what I'm saying? Like, what would happen if Caitlin Clark was saying something around that way with her lips? Oh, the internet would burn down, fam. They will be coming at Caitlin Clark left and right. You already have some people, especially in the media, saying, oh yeah, Caitlin Clark always get these special whistles. She's this, she's that, race this, race that. So I can only imagine if she messed around and had a video that was close to something like this. Come on, fam.
From a purely business perspective, the WNBA's failure to protect Caitlin Clark is one of the most short-sighted decisions in modern sports management. This isn't just about doing the right thing morally, though that should be reason enough. It's about protecting an investment that has transformed their entire industry. Caitlin Clark's impact on WNBA attendance, television ratings, and merchandise sales isn't a matter of opinion. It's measurable fact that shows up in every financial metric the league tracks. Her games consistently outdraw other WNBA contests by massive margins, her jersey is the league's best seller, and her presence has attracted sponsors and media attention that the WNBA couldn't buy with their entire marketing budget. Yet the league seems determined to undermine this success by allowing other players to create toxic environments around their biggest draw. When players like Angel Reese can spend months manufacturing controversies without consequence, or when Brittney Griner can apparently use horrible language without facing suspension, it creates an atmosphere where targeting Clark becomes acceptable. This approach isn't just morally wrong, it's financially suicidal. The WNBA spent decades struggling for relevance, fighting for television coverage and begging fans to care about their product. Then Caitlin Clark arrives and single-handedly solves many of these problems, only to watch the league fail to protect her from the very players who should be thanking her for elevating their sport.
One person said, I will be reaching out to the WNBA to ask if Caitlin Clark, a trash effing white girl, violates its recent announcement, no tolerance for racism and no space for hate campaign. Will report back. Now, that is interesting because we know that they've been pushing their whole campaign about racism, attacks, and all these different scenarios playing out in the W.
The business community understands this concept instinctively. When you have an employee who dramatically increases your company's value and profile, you protect that employee from workplace harassment, toxic behavior, and hostile environments. You don't allow other employees to target them with impunity while pretending it's not your responsibility to maintain professional standards. A suspension for Brittney Griner wouldn't just be about punishing one player for inappropriate behavior. It would represent the WNBA finally deciding to establish and enforce professional standards that protect all players, especially their most valuable ones. The league has an opportunity to make a statement that racial language, regardless of the circumstances, has no place in professional basketball. Consider what message a suspension would send throughout the league. It would tell players that targeting fellow athletes with racial language will result in serious consequences, not just social media controversy. It would demonstrate that the league takes workplace harassment seriously and won't tolerate behavior that would be unacceptable in any other professional environment. More importantly, it would show Caitlin Clark and other players that the WNBA is serious about maintaining professional standards and protecting its athletes from hostile behavior. This isn't about special treatment for star players, it's about basic professional conduct that should apply to everyone, regardless of their status or popularity.
At WNBA, what is your current policy on respect to fellow players and racially motivated hostility? Yeah, I mean, what are we doing here?
The treatment of Caitlin Clark represents a microcosm of everything wrong with how the WNBA positions itself and manages its talent. Instead of celebrating and protecting the players who elevate the sport, the league seems content to allow those players to become targets for frustrated competitors who can't match their impact or success. This approach doesn't just harm Clark individually, it damages the entire sport of women's basketball. When the league's biggest star faces constant targeting and harassment without league intervention, it sends a message to young girls watching that success will make you a target rather than a celebrated achievement. It teaches them that instead of working harder to match someone's success, it's acceptable to tear them down through manufactured controversies and inappropriate behavior. The long-term consequences of this approach extend far beyond any individual incident. If the WNBA continues to allow its stars to be targeted with impunity, it risks creating an environment where talented players might choose other opportunities rather than subject themselves to systematic harassment. It also risks alienating the new fans that players like Clark had brought to the sport, fans who came to watch basketball excellence rather than reality television drama.
What happens when a white girl joins a majority black league? Her coming to the league brings more viewers, more ad money. The Caitlin Clark tide is going to, if embraced, rise all boats. The majority in the league, which is black women, has done everything they can to not welcome Caitlin Clark to the league. Why? There has never been any cost for black WNBA players.
The Brittney Griner incident represents a crossroads moment for the WNBA. The league can either finally establish professional standards that protect all players from inappropriate behavior, or it can continue down its current path of selective enforcement and cowardly leadership that prioritizes avoiding difficult decisions over maintaining basic professional conduct. A suspension for Griner would send a clear message that racial language has no place in professional basketball, and that the league is serious about protecting its players from hostile behavior. It would demonstrate that success on the court doesn't excuse inappropriate conduct, and that the WNBA operates with consistent standards for all players, regardless of their status or popularity. Failing to act, however, would confirm what many observers already suspect, that the WNBA lacks the courage to enforce its own value.